Well, we're here with Booger Red's Mr. Everything. Why don't you tell us who you are, sir?
I'm Barrett Mader. I'm the writer and director of Booger Red, co-writer and director of Booger Red.
So when you and Johnny, was it, you read that article? What made you decide this is what we've got to do?
Yeah. In 2009, I read this article in Texas Monthly by Michael Hall, a very talented journalist, and he wrote this article called Across the Line that detailed the criminal case that we investigate in our film. And I read it, and it was just, stranger than fiction. It was like alleging, it was telling the story of this foster mother who brought these allegations of sexual abuse forward to the police. And she was claiming that her foster kids were telling her the story of abuse at the hands of their birth mother and her friends. And the allegations were just crazy, and they involved a swingers club that actually existed in this small town in East Texas. They involved a friend of the kid's birth mother named Booger Red, and his trailer, and there was allegations of a sex kindergarten in his trailer, and it was just all really bizarre. And the testimony that the kids gave was what really threw it into question for me. These kids were 4, 5, and 6 years old, very young, and their testimony was very bizarre. And they made claims of parachuting into the swingers club, and that there were witches flying around the room on broomsticks, like stuff that was like detached from reality, and made me question whether whether A, anything happened to them at all, and then B, if someone hadn't put them up to this. And so that, coupled with a guy named Booger Red, which was so bizarre, and a swingers club in the Bible Belt, East Texas, I was hooked on the story. And then once I kind of dug further and started questioning, the merits of this case and whether it actually happened or not, it just kind of pulled me in.
Can we talk about that digging further? Because
Yeah.
when you sent me all this stuff, I watched the film and then I read the article.
Right.
And I was like, and this article is very fleshed out. It's very in-depth. Michael went to the full front of this. But you guys literally do have to dig this and unearth it again. It felt like.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
It was tough, man. It was like, I don't know. I enjoyed the research part of it, as tough as this subject matter was, obviously. But really, it started with me talking to Michael Hall, the author of the article. I met with him. Like, he, at that point had written, I think 3 or 4 follow-up pieces that all kind of more and more pointed in the direction of a miscarriage of justice story. And so I would obviously read his articles, and then after he was encouraging me to make the film, I started going out to Tyler, to the East Texas area where this all happened. And so I started meeting with some of the people, and pretty quickly got a sense of the defendants' desperation to tell this story. Like, they felt like they hadn't been heard, and they really wanted to talk to us and me and get their story out there. So,
Did you feel obligated then? Was there any of that type of feeling behind it?
I mean,
their story does seem so like, help us, like what the hell's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is a bit of that. It's tough. You do. The deeper we got, the more sense of obligation we felt we had. It's heartbreaking to hear these people, and you see it in the film. The mother of these kids who were kind of, testifying against their parents and against all these people. She talks about how, no one ever listened to us, and no one ever wanted to hear our story. These people were, on the fringes of society. They've lived rough lives. They've had, trouble with addiction, some of them. They're, not wealthy people. They live in, places that, they have lived in places that were kind of fringy and stuff. And so these are like kind of the people that often get swept under the rug in society, especially by our justice system when it fails to seek justice. And that's kind of what I think happened in this case, is like, that these people were just kind of fringe characters who had kind of run-ins, brief and, not that kind of just brief run-ins with the law, and they were kind of like easy targets in a way, and kind of swept under the rug in this case.
What made you decide to make the structure a part of the element of the film and a part of the whole background of the movie? Because this easily just could have been a very simplistic documentary.
Yeah.
You went through like normal.
Right. Yeah, and you're speaking to the hybrid nature of the film, the fact that we bring in fictional elements as well as documentary elements. And documentaries are so often about access, and having access to your subjects. Which in this case we had access to a lot of people, but they were all on one side of they're all on the defense side of the case, and we kept running into roadblocks and hitting brick walls with the prosecution side. The people who prosecuted the case and put all these people in jail did not want to talk to us, or they wouldn't go on camera, right? So we had a problem of access, and so we're like, well, how do we tell this story without access to half of the story? And so we were in fictionalizing our main character and giving a fictional reporter kind of the duty of going on the beat to find out what happened in this case. We were able to at least illustrate the hurdles that we came across and like the brick walls that we hit. Like he's kind of living in the film. Our reality is like, knocking on the door of the DA's office and getting shut down, or being told to go away, or that no, we won't meet with you. So we were able to at least illustrate that struggle a little bit. So that was a big part of it. And then, also another thing is like, in this case, Margie Cantrell, the foster mother, took elements of real fact. Like the kids in this case really knew a guy named Booger Red. That's true. They used to go to his house and play with his son, Boogie, Stephen Kelly. There really was a swingers club operating in the small East Texas town of Mineola. But this foster mother took those elements of truth and weaved a narrative of fiction around it that landed these 7 people in prison for life. So in a way, we always kind of thought of, I don't know if it's apparent in the film, but we took elements of fact, these people's real testimony, these lawyers and these defendants' real testimony as given to us, and we created a fictitious narrative around it to correct the story in a way. So we're, in a way, doing a little bit what this foster mother did. It was weaving a fiction around all of this, but we're doing it hopefully to correct the wrongs. So that's maybe it's a little too meta, or
it'd only be meta if it didn't maybe actually work to some extent. You know what I mean? Like, can we talk about that side of it? Sure. Like the impact of this?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you as a filmmaker, that this has made an impact? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting. There's a lot of things going on right now. There's a couple of kids that are maybe today even talking to a reporter that I won't name about maybe recanting their testimony in the case. So there's movement here, and we still have one of the defendants is still in prison, and he's been in prison for 9 years, and for this crime that, through our investigation and through our research, we believe did not happen. So that's the stakes are pretty high. This guy's sitting in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And so we're hopeful. We the jury's still out as to whether we'll be able to have a successful appeal, or whether this film will help that at all. But I think, like, in stirring up the pot here, and these kids getting older, and one of the children watched the film yesterday. They were here. Like, one of the kids who was testifying against their parents is now living with that parent again, and he came and watched the film. And so, I don't know. I think us presenting the facts as we see them in the film is stirring the pot up, and who knows? Like, maybe these kids are going to, come out and say that their testimony was coached and false, and it'll help the guy that's still in prison and potentially exonerate the people who had to plead guilty to a lesser charge in order to get out. So we're hopeful that a lot of things can happen, and that's the goal.
And it's crazy how it is, like, it's happening right now.
Yeah, it's happening right now as we speak. So we're knocking on wood that things can happen for Dennis Pittman. And like Dennis Pittman is an interesting case. Like, when his lawyer was there yesterday at the screening, and he said some, Dennis Pittman, he's a guy, he's a little rough around the edges, I mean, he maybe sometimes sold small amounts of drugs, marijuana or whatever. And like, whether you believe he should be punished for that or not, fine. But like, just because you don't like the cut of someone's jib, where they live, the fact that they may be involved in some petty crimes, just because you might not want to have them over for dinner at your house, you're not comfortable being around them, doesn't mean that you can just put them in jail for life for a crime that didn't happen.
Yeah. Especially one that has such weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy story.
It's a crazy story. But yeah, I think that's a really important lesson, is for me at least, to like, I think that these people just didn't look the part of your upstanding citizen, and they were kind of easy targets and easily swept under the rug, and that's unfortunate. That's terrible. It's not how our system works, and it's not how this country should operate.
What's it mean to you to be able to showcase this in our state and to come home here with Dallas International? Because it isn't, you didn't have to go outside the state to a film festival to show, here's what's going on in Texas. No, you guys were in the Capitol showing this. You're in Austin. You're here in Dallas. Like,
right.
Texas does want to see maybe change.
Yeah.
And that's got to be uplifting, knowing that you guys are helping do that.
Yeah, I mean, in a very small way, I hope we're contributing to the conversation for sure. And, I think things are just changing. I think technology is really like helping to move the ball forward in terms of people knowing everything. Like, no one's getting away with anything anymore. I mean, just all the kind of, attacks from police on young black men in the last couple of years that we've seen, like, that's just a slice of what life is like in 2015, 2016, Like, imagine what wasn't captured on smartphones for the last 50 years. And if this is like, we're at the improved state of things, you know what I mean? Like, what was going on in 1981 or 72, you know what I mean? Just imagine. So I think technology is helping in that way, but then also just like, you're hearing more of these stories. You're hearing like, the Michael Morton case, these stories of prosecutorial misconduct, of collusion between the sheriff's department and the district attorney's department. And, these kind of good old boy networks are being broken down left and right with just increased exposure. And, our film is trying to be part of that conversation. So,
what does this festival mean to you?
Dallas is great. I mean, I love James and Sarah and the whole team here. They're awesome. And I love coming home. And it's just a classy festival. Like, they treat everyone really well. And they have great taste, and it's a nice event. It's great to be part of bringing culture to my home city.
What's it like also, you and like David, you guys have put Richardson way more on the map, it feels like. I enjoy that.
Yeah,
that must be nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I mean, obviously, I don't consider myself on the echelon of a David Gordon Green, but he's an old friend, and we grew up together in Richardson, Texas. And there's another director, Brian Belichick. He's a huge commercial director, and might have a feature here sometime. But I grew up right behind David's house at one point, and then we moved a quarter mile away, and I was around the corner from Brian Belichick. So like, those guys are pretty heavy hitters, but like, I don't know. The three of us ended up being filmmakers, so it's pretty wild. Something in the water in Richardson. I don't know.
Yeah, the water. Let's blame the water.
Blame the water. Yeah.
Well, it's always a pleasure, and
Yeah, man.
I know this festival loves you, so
Cool.
thank you for coming back.
All right, thanks, Gaddy. All right.